Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio. Now I haven't posted a video in quite some time, probably about 3 months now. We have been busy working on our house, trying to get it finished. We still have a bit of work to do yet, but we're getting close to being done. Right now we're trimming out windows and doors, and then we'll move on to baseboards, and I think that's probably close to what we'll need to do. I think we need to do some trim up on the ceilings too, where the settling space is. So probably more than you want to know. But anyway, it has cut into time for me to make videos. So and we still don't have my quilting space set up, and that'll take a while because we'll need to start framing. We've started framing walls down there, but we're going to kind of put that on hold to get all of the trim work done. And that noise you hear in the background is my dog. She's chewing on a chewy stick, so you hear some low clicking noises. Our daughter is out of town. She's with some friends, and Sophie's a little bit nervous. She doesn't like it when Sarah isn't around, so she's sticking close. Anyway, today what I wanted to do is to show you a little bit more detail of one of my vintage quilts. And this one is kind of a 3-generation quilt. Well, more like a two-generation quilt. The blocks were made by my grandmother, and when she passed away in 1960, and my grandfather, they stayed with him until he passed away in 1970, and then they were given to my dad's sister-in-law, so his brother's wife. She kept the blocks until in the early 2000s, and then she took half of them and she sewed them into a quilt top, and she gave me the quilt top to finish quilting, and then she gave the quilt to her husband, which is my dad's brother. And then she gave me the rest of the quilt blocks because she didn't want to make another quilt out of those. So I hung on to them until I could find fabric to go with them. So I'm going to grab that quilt and I'll show it to you a little bit closer. Okay, here's my quilt. Let me show you part of it. This is made with 1940's fabrics, the blocks are. So you can see those. So please stop. Yeah. And the blocks are different. There's all different variety of fabrics in here. The outer border, the binding, and the inner border and the setting triangles, those are 1930's reproductions, except for, well, the inner border, which is a solid. That's a Bella solid. Everything else, the setting triangles in the outer border or reproduction 1930's fabrics. So I got those at a quilt show that our quilt guild was putting on, and it was from one of the vendors there. So I went and bought those fabrics there and then was able to complete the quilt. So these blocks they were hand stitched, and I think there's 42 of them in this quilt. And they have been sitting in a cedar chest, I believe, since at least the 1960s, maybe before. I really don't know when my grandmother pieced these blocks. I didn't know her. I was 2 years old when she passed away, so I don't remember her, and I do know that I spent quite a bit of time with her because my mother had gotten sick and was hospitalized for, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks back in 1959 maybe, and I lived with my grandparents during that time, so I knew I had spent quite a bit of time with her, but I don't remember her, which is really sad. But I do have photographs of her, and I have these quilt blocks, and I have one of her chairs. Kind of an easy chair. It's not a fully upholstered chair. But if I have a picture of it, I'll pop it up here for you, or it'll probably be on this side if I remember correctly. So anyway, I do have a cousin who's about 16 years older than me, and of course he remembers her really well. And he said that she used to have friends that would come over and they'd quilt and, you know, make quilt blocks. And he did ask me one time, he said, "Do you remember her?" And it's like, no. I do remember some things from when I was 2 years old, but I don't remember her. And what I remember was being hospitalized. I had pneumonia when I was 2, and I might have been closer to 3 at the time, but my mother said I was 2, so I think I was an older 2-year-old. And I remember bits and pieces being in the hospital, because it was you know, quite traumatic back then. The way they treated children in the hospital was a little bit inhumane, and you know, I remember that stuff. So, but anyway, I don't remember her. I was really close to my grandfather though, and I still miss him. And he passed away in 1970, so a long time ago. But I finished the top, I put it together, and then I machine quilted it. It has a custom design in it, and you probably see it a little bit better from the back. I did piano keys in the outer border. I did a little floral motif in the inner border. I did a fan design in the setting triangles, and I did some feathers and some straight line quilting within the blocks. And I'll move around and show you the quilt a little bit closer. Anyway, the story of that quilt is written on a, see if I can find it. It's written on my label. I can find it. Here we go. Or a little bit of the story. I called it Dolores Cactus Basket Quilt. I have it's hand-pieced by Dolores Ziegemeyer, which is my grandmother, in St. Charles, Missouri, prior to 1960. The top was designed, pieced, and quilted by Dolores' granddaughter, Susan, which is me. And I had the city that I was living in, and it was 2016 when I completed it. So I kind of combined techniques. You know, she did hand piece this, and I was told by several quilters, well, they're vintage blocks, they were hand pieced, you should hand quilt this quilt. And I have hand quilted quilts before, but I am a machine quilter. That is my contribution to this quilt, is my talents. I'm much more talented at machine quilting than I am at hand quilting. And I didn't want this to take, you know, another 10 years to complete, which the way my life is, it's been really busy, and it probably would have taken me that long. I'm not, you know, I have a full-time job, so, you know, when my grandmother was a young married woman, she stayed home and raised her children. And then she did have a job. Yeah, my grandmother did have a job outside the home at some point, but I think early in her marriage she was a homemaker. So she had more time to quilt. But then, you know, she hand-pieced these blocks, but she never got them put into a quilt. So I don't feel bad about machine quilting this one. So I'm going to lay this quilt out on my bed, and I'm going to show you a little close-up photos, some video of the quilting that I did on this quilt. Okay, so I have the quilt laid out on my bed. I think it looks really nice. It is a decent sized quilt. It probably would work well on either a full size or a twin bed. It's a little bit short, but I use it as an extra quilt on my bed. And like I sleep cold, my husband sleeps hot, so this quilt, I double it up and lay it on my side of the bed, and then on top of the quilt that we already have on the bed. And That way my husband doesn't get it warmer, and yet I can stay warm enough to sleep. I don't sleep when I'm cold, so I have to be warm. So even in the summer when the air conditioner's on, I have to have at least 2 layers of quilt on it, not 3. So this is the quilt here, and then let me show you some more close-up videos of the blocks. Okay, here's one of the blocks here. You can see I did a little fan design here in the bottom, and then this section here, like the legs of the baskets, I just did some curved lines, and then I did a little feather in here, and then here are some straight line quilting around each one of the diamonds. And then this section we have feathers on both sides, here and here, more curved quilting, and then feathers in the rectangles on both sides there. So that's the quilting that I did in the blocks. And then in the setting squares I did a feather wreath, and I also did an outline stitch. I did that first, and then I did the feather inside the block. So this is set on point, and you know, it went together quickly because the blocks were already made. Now, I've never tried piecing one of these blocks, but I need to kind of work on that. But there's the fabrics in here. You can see we have quite a few stripes, and there's kind of like a border print in here, and then different blues. Like this blue fabric is repeated in several different blocks. I think what ties this all together, not only is it the error of the fabrics, but that all the bases of the blocks have this pink fabric in them. So that kind of tied them all together. Now the quilt that my aunt made, she had a soft, kind of almost a sage green alternate block in hers, is what we did for her quilt. And I don't know, I can't remember exactly. Let me see if I can find a picture of her, that quilt, then I will post that too. My aunt has since passed away also, and her daughter, one of her daughters has that quilt now. So, lots of variety, but you can see this blue fabric shows up a lot. And there's another navy here, but it's a different print, this one here. There's another plaid. There's some gingham. And it has some florals. This may be a 30s print here. There's some prints that look like 30s to me. Possibly this one too. I think the difference between the 30s and the 40s, there's several differences, but you know, the 30s had smaller print, and they were more clear colors, almost pastel, and the 40s were darker fabrics and larger prints. Probably like this. I think that might be a 40s also. But I'd asked my aunt about that, and she took the blocks to her quilt guild. She lives in a different area of the state, and all the ladies there agreed that they were probably 1940s fabrics. So this is my grandmother's quilt. It is very precious to me. It's one of my favorites. I like all vintage quilts, but you know, this one has a family history to it, which makes it special. And my grandmother, she was fairly young when she passed. She was in her 50s, so she was very young. She had heart issues. And, you know, medicine wasn't as advanced back then, so it was, you know, just, you know, they did what they could, but the technology and medicines just weren't available back then. But these are some of the blocks. Okay, let me show you some of the border. Okay, here is the inner border. I did this little flower design. It's like a little 3-petal flower. I like doing this design also as an overall, and I also sometimes throw in leaves. When I do it as an overall design, I do throw in leaves, but on borders, I will also throw in leaves sometimes. And then this is just the piano key. You can see on the back. There's the floral there, and then the piano keys. And they're about 1 inch apart. I used a cream colored thread on the blocks. Here's one of the blocks. The sun will help me cast shadows so we can see those a little bit better. There's the back side. And then I used a pink thread on the alternate blocks because the fabric was pink, so I did that. And then also I used pink in the alternate, or the triangles, the setting triangles, with the little fan design. Now, doing custom quilting is my favorite. I'm not, I haven't done any overall with pentagrams in years. When I do overalls, I do it freehand from the front of the machine instead of using patterns on the back of the machine. But I may change that. And I did a little 1/4 inch binding with the pink. Okay. Showing you the quilt from the other side. This is just the same thing, just the back. There's a block. And then there's some more of the blocks. This is a red fabric. It's almost an orangey red. It looks pink here on my camera, but that's red. And here's one that has some teal in it. Teal and maroon. And I imagine these are all fabrics from other sewing projects. Dresses or blouses, or they could have been fabrics, you know, that the ladies shared when they got together to quilt. So anyway, this is my quilt, my grandmother's quilt. And this is one that I do use it, though, as I said, it does stay on my bed, but this is one that I'm very careful with. What I have found with vintage quilts is that the fabrics they're made out of really aren't real high quality. And when you use those quilts, they will wear, the fabric will wear, and it'll start tearing at you. It'll start tearing on you just anywhere. Not necessarily along your quilting lines, but just usually it wears out in places that you don't have any quilting. So like here it would kind of wear out in here. Now this is one piece that I forgot to do the quilting on, so I've got to get that on the machine and do the quilting on that. But I do have other vintage quilts where that was an issue that I was using, and I'll show you those quilts too in the future. I hope you enjoyed this video on my cactus basket quilt called Dolores Cactus Basket Quilt. It's special to me, and I hope you enjoyed it. So I hope that I can get more videos like this done for you on a more regular basis. It's a little harder here because we are under construction, and it's a smaller house, so it's hard to find a quiet spot to do this where there's not a bunch of construction clutter in the background. But hopefully we'll be done soon. Our goal is to be done by the end of June, so we've got 2.5 months to get things done. So at least up on the main level of the house. We still have the basement to do, but that's not a priority right now, which is why my studio isn't done, because it's not a priority. We need to get the living areas completed. So we're happy here. We're comfortable. We're really thrilled to be back out in rural settings, and it's nice to have our own place. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please click the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Thought you might want to see where all the noise was coming from. This is Sophie. There's Sophie. Look at there. Sophie Wolf. She's good as long as she doesn't realize she's being videotaped. And she's looking out the window looking for something to bark at. There is absolutely nothing out there. Just the wind blowing. Silly girl. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.